Western New York Regional Education Center for Economic Development presents Target Success. Bringing together leaders in business, industry, and education for worker training and community progress. Established in 1983, the Western New York Regional Education Center for Economic Development has been designated by the State Education Department to coordinate employment and training programs across New York. The Western New York Center serves Erie, Niagara, Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, and Allegheny counties. And now, here's the host of Target Success, Gerald Wolfgang.
Welcome to Target Success, our weekly cable television program that brings together leaders from the fields of education, government, economic development, and business. Today we have with us Carl Calabrese. Carl is the Deputy County Executive of Erie County, former supervisor of the town of Tonawanda. Welcome, Carl.
Sure, it's a pleasure to be here. Did this show a few years ago, had a good time, and thank you for having me back.
Well, we're really very happy to have you back. I don't think many people probably refer to you as the former supervisor anymore now, since you've been the Deputy County Executive for how many years now?
Well, we're in our 5th year now, but people still do, and in fact, sometimes they still say to me, how do you like your new job? And I remind them that the new job is now almost 5 years old, but no, I still hear that.
Well, when you're having fun, right?
Right.
And when time passes quickly. You've had a great experience working with the County Executive of Erie County, Joel Giambra. And I know that's going to continue. Tell us about what drives Joel.
That's a good question. What drives Joel Giambra is a commitment to change. He's looked at this area, as many of us have, and he said, look, the way we've done things over generations just hasn't worked. That's evident in employment numbers and the number of people who move away, especially young people. And if you continue to do things the same way over and over and over again, and expect a different result, that indeed is what some people have called insanity. And we need to change things, and we need to take a look at our governing structures that have ratcheted up taxes to a level 25–30% higher than the national average. And we need to start doing things, as he would say, better, smarter, and cheaper. And that is really what drives him, is the ability to make change. And you know what? That sometimes can be dangerous in a politician's life. A lot of folks in politics have entire careers and never ripple the waters at all, so to speak. And he's not like that at all. In fact, I think he gauges success by the amount of ripples he sends out. So he's comfortable doing it. He thinks that's his mission. He has won 2 elections now on that agenda to change things and challenge the structure and the status quo. And that's what gets him up in the morning every day and gets him excited about doing his job.
Certainly, when he was controller of the city of Buffalo, he came out with a plan for how we might reorganize, redistribute, and regionalize within Western New York, not just the county of Erie. He talked about how it really fits a global world rather than our old municipal governments piled on top of each other to the county, to the state. And what's the report card say about that now? In other words, you've been there 5 years. Joel's had an opportunity to spread the philosophy. In fact, if it wasn't for Joel Giambra, we wouldn't be having these regional information sessions that are on television and that now someone new has really carried the ball a little further. Tell us about that.
Yeah, in 1997, then City Controller Joel Giambra came out with a plan called No Handout, No Bailout. And it was a new formula for delivering services in the city of Buffalo. And it said, look, there's a lot of services that the county can provide to the city at a much cheaper rate that the city doesn't have to own. They don't have to own the service to provide the service. And there ought to be a contractual relationship where the city would identify those services that the county could provide at less cost and then contract with the county to provide those services. The savings then would be passed on to city taxpayers in the form of tax cuts. And in fact, that was the formula that's been used for the recent parks consolidation. The city is going to be paying the county to take that service over, and the county is also going to be realizing 100% of the revenues generated from the parks. And his idea was, we don't need to cut one municipal level taxes, only to see another go up. That's a zero-sum game. Everybody loses. What we need to do is drive everybody's taxes down. And one way of doing that was through contractual fee-for-service arrangements. And that really has been the the driving force behind a lot of our initiatives. What's the report card? Where we have had willing partners sit down with us to say, how can we do things differently? How can we deliver a service better, smarter, and cheaper? We've had very good success. I would have to give us a good, solid A grade on that. Problem is, we've not had enough willing partners. And again, as Joel has said oftentimes, he was elected county executive, not dictator. He cannot order two towns where you've had, for example, a town assessor retire. He can't order them to share one assessor. Just does not have the power to do that. But where we've had communities where an assessor has retired and they've come together and shared assessing services, success. We've had communities come together, for example, Lancaster, Town and Village, and merge their police departments. I believe if it wasn't for the county executive's agenda and his very vocal advocacy of regionalism, 5 years ago you couldn't have touched that issue, and yet it happened. The city of Tonawanda gave up its water system, got out of the water business, and turned it over to the Erie County Water Authority. We right now have a working group of nearly 20 communities in the southern part of Erie County working as a consortium. We call it the South Towns Water Consortium, to figure out a way how to deliver clean public water to all of those smaller towns in the southern part of Erie County with as little redundancy as possible. In the old days, every community would have gone out and you would have had 20 sets of infrastructure, water tanks, pump stations. That's crazy. Can't afford that anymore. So where we've had willing partners, we've had success, we can show success and prove success. But we really do need more willing partners, and that's got to come from the localities.
I live in a smaller town. It's probably the second largest town, say, in Erie County, maybe third in Lewiston. And you always get that feeling that the municipal officers in two villages, Village Youngstown, Town of Border, Town of Lewiston, Village of Lewiston, there's 4 municipalities in a matter of 3 miles, 4 miles, and yet 4 distinct governments, 4 distinct public works departments.
Right.
It's just amazing just to see the duplication. One school district, thank God, not like Cheektowaga that has 3 or 4. I mean, it is amazing to see if you start to list all the duplication.
We're beyond duplication. We're into triplication and quadruplication, if there's such a word. Let me give you a couple of examples. And I don't want to pick on any one suburb or any one group of municipalities, because this is true across the board, and I'm going to even use a county example. In the town of Hamburg, within a 3-mile radius, you've got the village highway barn, the town highway department barn, the county of Erie highway department barn, and the state of New York highway department barn. That's 4 sets of infrastructure, all doing essentially the same services. I was in town government for 14 years. I know a little bit about roads. You need to plow them in the winter and salt them. In the spring, you have to fix the potholes. About every 10 years, you have to repave them, and it's nice to sweep them once a month during the summertime. Those are essential road services, and you could figure out all possible combinations of contracting, where the state could contract with the county to take care of its road system. The village could go with the town. There's all kinds of possibilities of providing road service and doing away with multiple levels of bureaucracy. That's our problem. I'll give you another example. Within downtown Buffalo right now, as we speak, within, let's say, a half-mile radius, there's 3 separate police academies, all teaching the same state-certified courses, all graduating people with the same degree and the same certificate. You've got the Erie County Sheriff's Department Academy, you've got the City of Buffalo Police Department Academy, and you've got Erie County Central Police Services that provides a training academy for all of the suburban forces. All right? That's ludicrous. That is absolutely unaffordable. Now, the good news here is that when our new public safety campus opens up, we are eventually going to bring all of those academies under one roof. We're going to have one in the city of Buffalo that will take care of all of those police certification and those police graduates. So better days are coming, but you see what's happened in New York in general, Western New York in particular? We have layered government on top of each other. We've got about the average number of governments for a community our size. What we've got is too many governments doing the same thing, and that has produced a cost structure that is unaffordable in today's day.
And that's certainly the reason for high taxes. City of Buffalo,
Absolutely.
You just had a very successful experience with the City of Buffalo and the County of Erie, and Joel and the mayor certainly worked hard to bring it together. Buffalo has distinct budget problems. We'll talk about some other areas of the country in a minute, but I wanted to talk just specifically about Buffalo and the success that you just brought forth in assisting Buffalo and the county.
Well, yeah, we started actually a year or so ago with the recognition that there were certain services in the city of Buffalo that really are regional services. For example, Shays and the zoo and Kleinhans. Those are facilities that are used by people all over the county. And so a little over a year ago, actually a year and a half or so, the county proposed that we take those over. Those are regional assets, and that they become county assets that we could then improve in a way the city cannot now because of its fiscal problems. And we were successful in taking those services into county government. And that was very well received because most people realize that those are indeed regional assets. And probably the vast majority of people who use those facilities come from outside city limits. And so that was a very successful experiment, and we have been able to direct capital expenditure to the upgrading and improvement of each of those facilities that we think is going to pay dividends in the future in terms of attendance and recognition across the state. And now we have just concluded a successful negotiation to take over city parks, many of which are Olmsted parks, and again, regional assets, parks that are used by people all across the county. The city is in tough financial shape, and they are being driven now by fiscal forces to do things differently that I think will continue this trend. But the county executive wants to make sure that when we do take on a service like parks, that there's a stream of revenue to help pay for it. Otherwise, we put the county budget in jeopardy, and again, that's a zero-sum game, and that doesn't benefit anyone.
The city of Buffalo is under a control board.
Correct.
It has major budget problems. No different than Pittsburgh and other Rust Belt cities. I was shocked with Pittsburgh, only because I had visited Pittsburgh, I think it's about a year and a half ago, to a major conference. I was amazed at the development of the downtown. Major companies had brought their CEOs there. It was the distinct opposite of Buffalo. And yet, they're teetering on bankruptcy. Why?
Well, I'm not an expert on Pittsburgh, but I have studied government for many years, and generally speaking, that's a problem. It's a budgetary problem. That usually it's because government spends too much, and that when the times are good and lots of money is flowing in, when people are earning incomes and paying taxes and sales taxes going up, government tends to expand at that point and add new programs onto its ledger. And then things get bad, there's a recession, people get laid off, tax receipts drop. Government has not been able to then downsize and to look at its operation and say, okay, we have to prioritize, and some things we're going to continue, some things we're going to cut back, and some things we're going to eliminate. Those are decisions families make in tough times all the time. Those are decisions that businesses make in tough times, and they do it often. Government has proven unable to do that over the years. Politically, it's very difficult. And so you begin to engage in fiscal gimmicks, and you defer the problem, hoping things will get better and better days will come and you can afford it. And eventually, the bill payer or the bill collector comes to your door and says, pay up, and you have a fiscal crisis. And that's generally the history of fiscal problems within government, is overspending and the inability to cut back, pare back, change the way you do business during tough times.
I'm not looking to get you in any difficulty when I bring this part of it up. Only because I read a little bit about Pittsburgh, and I found that their union contracts were such that they had really borrowed from Paul to pay Peter. I mean, they had really prolonged those contracts with deals to keep the large number of employees, to extend the retirement benefits, to postpone the raises to future years, and those future years came due, so that their contracts were very heavy and very difficult to maintain. And that's one part of overspending the future, and figuring that with the new development, the monies would flow.
Pretty much what I described in general, that as being kind of a condition of government. Look, it's no secret. Municipal labor unions are very powerful, not only in this part of New York, but across the state. And management within government, generally speaking, does not have the same flexibility to deal with labor issues that management in the private sector has had. Now, I think there's a major reason for that. Let's take a look at the auto industry. The reason why we have major auto manufacturing operations going on in Western New York, in my town, the General Motors plant, is because a number of years ago, when that plant in Tonawanda was experiencing major pressures, and may have been on, and not may have been, it was on the endangered list back in the early 80s with General Motors. Union and management sat down and said, look, we cannot kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. We have to change the way we do business, the way we make engines, if we're going to continue to compete. And to its credit, union leaders understood that fact of life, that if the jobs go away, you're not going to replace them. Auto workers are not going to find another job in Western New York at that level. Sat down with management and made changes, and made some gut-wrenching changes, to their credit, both management and labor, and produced now one of the most productive engine manufacturing plants in the General Motors system, if not the world. Okay, that pressure of closure doesn't exist in the private, in the public sector. Government can't shut down. It can't pick up and move to another community where it's more cost-effective. It's here, and so that pressure does not exist in the public sector, and that's a major difference.
I know one of the contracts with the UAW was protecting, for example, if someone retired, they kept 2 jobs. So for every one they lost, they kept 2. And it was retirement. It wasn't somebody being let go. So they were able to deal with that. But it was the UAW and,
that's right,
and their management team that worked together to keep that. Plus, they make more engines there today than they did when they had more people working there back in the 80s, just so you know.
That is a direct result of union leaders understanding that General Motors can locate a plant anywhere in the nation, if not the world now. And that unless they got competitive, those jobs were gone. That pressure just does not exist in the public sector.
Moving right on, partnerships. You have some very successful partnerships. Let's talk about partnerships New York State and the federal government that Erie County has.
One of the areas that I work a lot on and spend a lot of time on is Homeland Security. Shortly after the 9/11 attacks, the county executive asked me to take a look at all of our public safety departments to see how they look now with this new threat facing us. And I've been working on Homeland Security for the last 2.5, 3 years, and that has produced a number of very interesting partnerships at the state and federal levels. And we've been very successful in bringing dollars into this community from the state and federal level that has vastly improved training for first responders, that we believe very shortly will allow us to begin rebuilding our emergency communication system, which is desperately in need of upgrading. It's a 1950s vintage radio system that has many radios that don't talk to each other, and a lot of parts of the county, a number of parts of the county, where you have what's called dead airspace, where signals just don't reach. We need to rebuild that, and we have thus far been successful in getting almost $14 million of state and federal grants to do that, and we're very close, we think, to being entering into a partnership with New York State as they rebuild their communication system. Our partnership would allow us to piggyback off of their system and save us $20 million. So again, it's taken outreach to find common ground and common objectives with other layers of government, but in the area of Homeland Security, we've been very successful with state and federal agencies, and also with other counties. We have put together regional coalitions. We have an 8-county public health coalition, which Niagara County and Erie County are partners in, which has built a bioterrorism laboratory in Erie County to service the needs of now up to 17 counties in Western New York. We have a 10-county communication coalition, which has helped us lobby effectively for some of those dollars to rebuild communication systems. We have a mass inoculation plan in 8 counties to be able to deliver mass inoculations to the 1.8 million people who live in those counties within a 10-day period. So some very interesting regional collaborations going on in the area of Homeland Security.
And you've had other, certainly, partnerships with counties, different counties within Western New York, but I know with Niagara County you've had a good working relationship with the 2 bodies, the 2 county legislative bodies, and they're working together. We are the only region, I know I always bring this up when you've been on the program, or Joel's been on the program, we're the only region in the state without a regional planning board.
Right.
To counter that, at least, you've been working together with the 2 governments to try and do some planning effectively for transportation, for certainly health, as you've mentioned.
Yeah, transportation, health, and there's been some good discussions going on about tourism and promotion of the tourist business and the convention business that I think is going to produce some fruit in the next few months. And I think you could see some major initiatives, collaborative initiatives between Erie and Niagara counties to really maximize how getting more people here, staying longer and spending more money, not just in the city of Buffalo or the city of Niagara Falls, but in the whole region. There's so many different aspects that we can promote to Western New York and Canada. That once you get people here, shame on us that we can't keep them here for 2, 3, 4 days to spend their money and feel good about it. And the discussions are ongoing right now to come up with some plans that I think may accomplish that in just a few months.
Well, I'm not sure what those plans are, and I certainly won't. We'll look forward to hearing from them, or hearing them as soon as you do have a successful development. One of the things Joel had said on our program a number of years ago, and one that I've read in the papers, and I think I made that comment to you when you were on the last time, was about having a state convention center. In other words, having the state actually build a convention center instead of having Niagara County and Erie County building convention centers that maybe weren't as large, but building one large convention center which could handle not only state conferences but national conferences, and try and provide some type of transportation link. I don't want to say jokingly, I was serious, but maybe I was jokingly putting it on the table, a monorail between Buffalo and Niagara to be able to connect the state convention center, as I'll call it, with certainly Niagara Falls, the casino, etc., to bring about this mutual regionalism for tourism.
Jerry, I agree with you. I was a councilman on the town board in Tonawanda in the 80s and advocated a direct link and connection between the city of Buffalo and the city of Niagara Falls. I always thought that was the way to extend the metro system if you were going to extend it. The convention business, and we certainly would like to see something that as you just advocated. The problem is the cost of building such a facility is probably north of $160 million, and the state does not have the wherewithal that it once did. It's still recovering from the post 9/11 recession, which hit New York City so hard because of Wall Street, and they are the economic engine not only of the state but of the nation. And so I don't know if the state has the wherewithal for that type of investment any longer. And also the economics of the convention business have changed. There have been a lot of large convention centers built to the point where there's not enough business to go around. And so what's happened is large convention centers that were built to attract national conventions to fill their space because of the lack of national conventions are now competing against each other for state and regional conventions. And so the business has changed, and there's just not as much convention business to go around, and the big houses are now competing for smaller venues. So it's a tough business right now.
That's very interesting, but it's certainly some place that regionalism could work for
sure. But even short of building a new building, there's an awful lot of ground to be tilled in the area of conventions, trade shows, visitors, and tourism between the two counties, and fishing. I tell you, when you look at what Ohio has done, sits along Lake Erie, with its fishing industry, it has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. We sit on the same lake with the same species of fish, and we have not done that yet. And I think you're going to see some movement there to some type of business plan, master plan, to develop the fishery in Western New York between Erie and Niagara County. There's gold waiting to be taken out of both lakes in the form of the fishing industry, not just nationwide, but worldwide.
Let's talk about that a little more with the waterfront. Every place you go in the country, the waterfront development is spectacular. And you start in the Niagara River, and you start at Buffalo, and you look at the lake, your lake waterfront, you look at your river waterfront, and even in Niagara, we've not taken advantage. If we actually built our business and industry there instead of our recreational pursuits, and I think we now recognize that, and now the waterfront plans really need to be developed for recreational purposes.
You know, this is I know people get frustrated. They look at all the waterfront and they say, why can't we develop it? It's a little more complicated for this reason. Along that river generations ago were built industry that were water dependent, that needed a lot of water. Those industries are gone, but the problems associated with those industries in terms of what was left behind environmentally are still there. And so a lot of parcels of land along the waterfront, although they look very attractive, have environmental problems. Not major, but nonetheless, they have to be dealt with. They have to be cleaned up. And remember, we live in a state where if my business 100 years ago left something behind that's dirty and needs to be cleaned up, and you buy that land today, you're in the legal food chain. You can be sued for the cleanup. And that works against investors buying land. So that's part of the problem. The good news is a lot of the pollution is very low level and it can be cleaned up, but we've got to deal with the liability laws. Second issue is a good part of the land is owned by the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority. For years, for whatever reason, developing that land was not a priority issue. That has changed. And the NFTA now is very interested in developing that land. They're out actively searching for a developer. They're putting out requests for proposals for nationwide developers to come in. And when that happens, not if, it's going to happen, because the NFTA wants it to happen, the governor wants it to happen, the county executive and the mayor want it to happen, you're going to see hundreds of acres of prime land along the waterfront be put on the market that weren't on the market before. You've got the Erie Canal project under construction as we speak, and you've got the possibility of a Bass Pro Shop on the Buffalo waterfront. If that occurs, Jerry, I'll tell you, that is going to draw millions and millions of people to the Western New York waterfront that don't come there now. I've been to a Bass Pro Shop. I went to their flagship store in Springfield, Missouri last December. 200,000 square feet. It's a destination. It's a tourist destination. It's an event to be in one of these stores. If that facility is built in Western New York, you watch the numbers of people that come down to the waterfront, spend their money, and that will have other attractions that want to spin off of that huge concentration of people coming to one place at the same time.
Carl, you know, it seems 28 minutes goes by so quickly. I never asked you your phone number in case someone wanted to have you come and speak, so I'm going to do that at your website, and then I want to really thank you for being here today, but let's first have the phone number.
My office phone number is 858-8063, area code 716. I'm available to speak to any group. I love to speak about these topics. I love to speak about some other topics like the problem of Medicaid and what that's doing to county budgets across the state, and especially in Western New York. Also talk about Homeland Security and some other issues like that. My website is Calabrese, C-A-L-A-B-R-E-C, at erie.gov, and people can reach me that way also.
I really appreciate you being here. We waited too long, and we're not going to wait this long. Another 6 months, we're going to have you back.
I'd love to come back
and talk about some of those other situations and bring us up to date. I really want to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in again today to hear the successful ventures of people like Carl Calabrese, our Deputy County Executive for the County of Erie, and look forward to seeing you again soon on Target Success.
For further information, questions, or suggestions for future programs, contact Gerald Wolfgang at 821-7185 or by email at jwolfgang@e1b.org.